right, City Clerk, could you go ahead and take the roll, please?
Alderman Fisk.
Here.
Alderman Braithwaite. Here. Alderman Nguyen. Here. Alderman Wilson. Here. Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Here.
Alderman Suffredin. Here. Alderman Revelle. Here. Alderman Rainey. Here. Alderman Fleming.
Here.
All right, great. Welcome, everybody, to the Monday, April 9th, 2018 Evanston City Council meeting. We've got everybody in attendance tonight. We've got a nice crowd here, and I'm sure many people watching from home. So thank you all for coming out. Two announcements, or maybe three announcements. One, I issued two proclamations this week. One was for the National Fair Housing Month, so something that we're talking a lot about here in Evanston in terms of affordable housing. We have a meeting coming up on April 30th for our next discussion on that. But fair housing and non-discriminatory housing is really, really important and something to honor this month. Second is this is National Library Week. And we are blessed to have a wonderful library here in Evanston. So I was pleased to issue that proclamation. I think Karen Danzig-Lyons, she's in the back of the room. Karen, if you want to come up and just make a couple remarks about the importance of National Library Week and what's going on here in Evanston.
Good evening, everyone. Mayor, members of the council, Clerk Reed, City Manager Bob Kowitz, Karen Danzig-Lyons, your library director, and we have a lot of fun all the time at the library, but during National Library Week, I'd like to draw your attention to a few programs that I hope you can join us for. Free tax preparation continues. It's not too late to come to the library and get your taxes prepared, and while you're there, you may want to enjoy on Thursdays. We have tech tutorials, so we have in English and Spanish people to help you with your tech questions. We've got a lot of story times to help with early literacy. We are featuring a children's dance class in Mandarin. Try and say that 3 times fast. And we have this month's African American Lit discussion at Gibbs Morrison. We're also showing Oscar film screenings for free this weekend, so if you miss seeing the Oscar Award winners, please come and join us at the main library and at our branches as well. Thank you.
Terrific, terrific. Thank you, Karen, and thanks for all that you are doing every week of the year, not just on National Library Week. Lastly, you know, the thing about being mayor, you really have a variety of things on your calendar. And today I had the opportunity to visit with the first grade class at Lincoln School, Miss Canelli's class. And these students had done these projects where they wanted to meet with the mayor and talk about the issues that are on their mind and important to them. So I thought I would share with you all what's on the minds of the first graders over at Lincoln School. 3 things. One is guns. Not surprising. It's in the news quite a bit, and there's lots of activity going on. I would argue positive activity to try and bring about sensible gun safety laws here in this country. The second is about littering and all that we can do to remove waste from just being thrown outside, and there's still too much of that. And the last one is about animal rights. Now, some of the animals, yep, Alderman Fisk, some of the animals we don't really have around here, pandas and some of the others that they brought up, but we had a nice conversation about that. So I thought everybody would be happy to hear that our students in this community are as engaged as the adults are in this community about the issues around them. So let's move on to city manager announcements. Wally?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, good evening. Paul D'Agostino from our Public Works Agency is here. We've got a couple big events coming up, and Paul's here to give us all the details. Paul, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Clerk Reed, and City Manager Bob Kowitz. Paul D'Agostino. I'm now the Environmental Services Coordinator for the city. One of the things I'm coordinating this year is our Clean Up Evanston event to honor both Earth Day and Arbor Day. The event will be held on Saturday, April 21st from 9 a.m. till 11 a.m. This kind of ties into what the first graders at Lincoln School were concerned with. We're going to be cleaning up. We have 12 volunteer sites, over 350 volunteer slots. Self-organized park cleanups are actually going pretty well this year. In conjunction with that, we're going to be having a free family-friendly Earth Day festivities with nature play at the Evanston Ecology Center from 9 to 11. The Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, in honor of Arbor Day, will be giving away free oak saplings that morning. And then we'll also be planting a tree at the Lat Arboretum. If you have any questions, you can always go to call 311 or go to sustainability at cityofevanston.org or the volunteer website on the city's website. We have some community partners this year, Evanston Tree Keepers, Canal Shores Golf Course, Northwestern University, both Districts 202 and District 65, the Ridgeville Park District, and the Water Reclamation District. And so far, out of those 350 slots, we've already filled over 175. We have volunteers at all 12 of the designated sites. We have 7 other additional sites that people have signed up for, and there's still plenty of openings, and it's less than 2 weeks away. We have 9 of the 12 locations are actually full, but, 9 of the 12 still have openings. So 3 of them are full, but the other 9 still have openings. There's a variety of different things we're going to be doing besides picking up litter. We'll be mulching trees and planting trees. So hope to see all of you there.
Great.
Thank you.
Paul. Any questions for Mr. D'Agostino? That concludes my announcements.
All right, great. Thank you, City Manager. City Clerk, do you have any announcements or communication? I think we had an election recently.
Yes. So I'm just going, if you can pull it up there, going to just give a quick post-election snapshot of the March 20th gubernatorial primary election. Thank you. So this year, the Evanston City Clerk's Office made an effort to conduct voter outreach to educate voters on early voting, on mail-in balloting, and on voter registration overall. So Evanston currently has 50,000 registered voters in the city. As of the election, we had 49,000, so we've had a few hundred registrations since the election. Evanston's turnout was, I believe, the highest in the county. It was 40%. We had 40% turnout in this election. Back in 2010, we had 31%. And in 2014, we had 18% turnout. Just a comparison of a few other suburban Cook County as well as Chicago. So the clerk's office, as I said, we had voter outreach and engagement. We did a 2-way texting campaign, phone banking, social media outreach, as well as voter registration. As you can see, we had over 12,000 conversations by text with folks, and we had specifically 8,488 conversations with folks who do not traditionally come out to vote in primary elections. Evanston Civic Center was the top early voting site in the county this election. This is the first time during a primary election that Evanston has had the most utilized early voting center. And in fact, in one day we had over 1,000 voters come in and vote on the last day of early voting for almost 6,000 folks coming out. This is the turnout by ward, 2014 versus 2018. The 9th ward had the highest increase in voter participation from 2014 to 2018. Congratulations, Cicely, and the people of your ward. The number of Democratic versus Republican ballots cast in Evanston was the starkest comparison that we've had thus far. And so it's interesting to see that back in 2014, we had 25% of our voters cast a Republican ballot, which may show that if Evanston goes over, 20% Republican, we may have a Republican governor. All right. The governor's race for Democrats, of course, our own Daniel Biss took the top spot here in Evanston with 62% of the vote. Compared with the rest of suburban Cook County, where he got 27% of the vote, and I believe it was about 26% statewide. For the Republicans, Bruce Rauner did a bit better here than he did in suburban Cook County. Our Democratic U.S. rep race was not contested, so these are the results for the Republican race. I'll quickly move on. Here, an interesting race was the 17th state district race, where Candace Chow got almost 60% of the vote here in Evanston, while getting 33% of the vote overall, 34% of the vote. And the winner in that race actually didn't didn't fare extremely well here in Evanston. In the Cook County Commissioner's race, Larry Sufferton did a bit better here in Evanston than he did throughout the district over his opponents, a young candidate, Bush Ramiwala, as well as Daniel Foster. The assessor's race, again, Fritz Kagi did a bit better here in Evanston than he did throughout suburban Cook County. And the marijuana legalization referendum got 80%, or I'll say 81% of the vote here in Evanston versus 63% countywide. So that might be some direction to the council here to look at marijuana legalization or decriminalization. And finally, looking ahead, the clerk's office will continue to expand and refine our voter outreach program. We're working with ETHS's History and Social Sciences Department and community groups to create a civics education program for the high school, where the clerk's office as well as community members will provide lessons and lesson planning. And then we will continue to lead on, join efforts to lead on democracy reforms, for example, campaign finance reform and participatory governing. So that is our quick snapshot.
That is definitely worth clapping for. Excellent. Well, thank you, Clerk Reed, for that very thorough review and analysis of voting here. I think everybody should be very proud of the civic engagement in this community, and that people turn out and they vote. And that's probably the most important thing you can do if you're not happy with the decisions that the state legislature is making or your local government. Before anybody goes and sends us all a bunch of emails, I think the legalization of marijuana, if that's an issue you care about, actually needs to be handled at the state level. And in terms of decriminalizing this, the past city council, the former city council, has done work on that issue here in Evanston with some ordinances that have been passed. So there's progress being made here in Evanston. On that, let's go ahead and turn to public comment. We have 23 people that have signed up for public comment. As I think people know, the rules that we have is public comments not to exceed 45 minutes. We take the number of people that want to speak, we divide it by 45 minutes, and so based on that, I'm going to ask everyone to keep your remarks to 2 minutes or less. So if everybody does that, we will wrap up public comment in 46 minutes. So I'll give you one extra minute. But I think that's the best thing. As always, I ask that you please be respectful and civil in your comments. I know there's lots of people here that have opinions one way or the other about different issues that are on tonight's agenda, and I know the City Council will have a thorough discussion about those issues today as well. So with that, I'll call off I'll do the first three so people know, and if we can get in order and get this going. As always, I will keep track of the time up here, and when you have 15 seconds left, I'm going to look at you and give a nod or something like that. If you can just take that cue and wrap it up in 15 seconds, we'd appreciate it. Let's be respectful to everybody that wants to speak tonight. All right, first up, Greg Williams, and then we've got James Engelman, and then Betty Esther.
Good evening. In support of the Lake House project, I want to offer a testimony to the power of sensory education. I came to Evanston in 1972, just graduating from IIT, with my 3-year-old daughter. We didn't have a car, but we rode constantly to Lighthouse Beach and that beautiful beach that Northwestern used to have, where those stupid buildings are now. We went to the beach all summers, and starting when she was 10, we camped at Rock Island at the end of Door County on a beautiful island, just in rapture at the beauty of the lake and the bluffs and the woods there. She went through Evanston schools. She went to Southern Illinois to become an environmental engineer. And she is now in the Chicago region of the EPA in the Great Lakes Division. And her specialty is cleaning up industrial pollution sediment from the rivers. She cleaned up the Sheboygan River. She's in charge of the Milwaukee rivers and many rivers around Lake Michigan. And this is how it works. This is how you capture that spark, those first graders, and something like this open to all the kids in Evanston. It's not the 3 R's, it's the beauty of the lake, and this is really the power of education. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. All right. Next up, we got James Engelman, then Betty Esther, then John Elsterda.
Hello, I'm James England from the 5th Ward. I'd like to talk about this taxi cab thing. I don't like the credit card. I like the coupon because I could add $1 or $2 a tip. Because when you use a credit card, they have the tip thing pops up in the window, and I do not. I have a problem with tipping. And it's hard for me to detect how much, what they want. So if one time I was putting on the lowest thing, and it turned out to be the highest thing, and my sister got mad because she knows she gets the papers from my credit card, and she was wondering how much, why I tipped so much. And the second thing is, Mr. Mayor, I felt sorry for you at the town hall meeting because I was there. I was at, when they were talking about this water pump thing, I was at a couple of meetings with, at the ward meeting, and one of the ward meetings had the person who was in charge of this water pump, and he was talking about it, and everybody agreed with it. So, and I don't know where all these people came from the town hall meeting, because you had jam-packed people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, James. All right, Betty Esther, then John Elsterda, and then Jeff Connie.
Good evening. I too was speaking of the town hall meeting. I was there. It was a very interactive town hall meeting, and our mayor talked about the city and how they do things, that there's a process. Everything is done by a process, and in following the city codes and ordinance and stuff. So we do that, and we follow a process. And at the meeting, we talked, and I had a question, and the mayor said that, yes, we should do that. And my question was, why not put on the website or somewhere for the residents to know how much is our liability that comes from lawsuits and the departments that they was created on? And he said, sure, I should do that. I should do that. I haven't seen it yet. So the process that is happening goes with the word that was used. As they said, words are powerful. The word should was the word that he used, not I will do that, but I should. Hopefully, now I have to go and create a FOIA, which I hate those things. But anyway, hopefully it will get up there, or he'll send it to me, and I do not have to do a FOIA. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Esther. I think we can get that sent. I think we can get that sent to you. That's all. Yes. All right. Next up, we've got John Sturda, Jeff Connie, and then Peter Lundy. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing names as well, John.
Good evening, members of the council, Mr. Mayor. My name is John Alsterda. I'm a lifelong Evanston resident, currently of the 7th Ward. I'm here tonight to offer my comment on the lease to the Lake House not-for-profit corporation that is before you tonight for vote. I respectfully urge you to vote no as to that lease. My reasons are twofold. The first is, having observed for many years the hard work that this council and your predecessors and many members of the community have put into this project, I think the time has come for some real certainty. And respectfully, I do not believe that the lease or memorandum of understanding that you will vote on offers that certainty. The reason is because the fundraising that has to be done to accomplish all of the things that the tenant needs to do is very speculative, in my opinion. And I would urge this council to look at a solution after all of these years and all of the hours and all of the work that provides some certainty. Secondly, I would favor a solution and a plan going forward at this beautiful lakefront site that recognizes ecological stewardship. In particular, I would favor a plan that would return the grounds to their natural state and would include things such as new plantings of the seagrass and other indigenous plants, as well as preserving the current beautiful Jensen Gardens. I spend a lot of time down at this park. It's a beautiful spot. I urge the council to take these matters into consideration tonight as you vote. Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right, Jeff Connie, then Peter Lundy, then Robert. Why am I mispronouncing your last name? Dalrymple. Tony. All right, Jeff.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Jeff Connie. My family and I have had the privilege to live in the 7th Ward for 29 years. Thank you for all the time and hard work you put in. I know it's overwhelming at times. It is my opinion that the proposed lease with Evanston Lake House and Gardens is not a financially responsible transaction for the city to enter into. Here's why. First and foremost, the financial amounts specified in the lease are inefficient to rehabilitate the building. In 2014, 4 years ago, city staff estimated the cost of rehabbing to be $7.5 million. The proposed lease allows ELHG to take possession of the premises after raising only $2 million, less than 30% of the 2014 estimate. The lease specifies that ELHG has 10 years to raise the final $3 million. The total of $5 million is only 2/3 of the 2014 estimate. In addition, there's no requirement for ELHG to raise any type of endowment for working capital. To begin to do this financing properly, $10 million is necessary, double what is specified in the lease, $8 million for the rehabilitation and $2 million for working capital, for a working capital endowment. Should construction start in 3 years and ELHG fundraising falls short of expectations, the property could sit with unfinished construction for years, posing unwanted liability for the city. This is above and beyond the $45,000 the city must spend over the next 3 years to maintain the property. Finally, following on to what John said, I believe there's a more desirable future for the property, both financially and ecologically, that needs to be discussed and considered. At the appropriate time, I'm part of a group that's ready, willing, and able to lead such a discussion. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Right at 2 minutes. Wow. Peter, we got Peter Lundy. All right. And then we've got Robert and then John Walsh.
My name was perfectly pronounced.
Oh, done something right.
I live in the 3rd Ward, and I've done so for 22 years. And I am among the many Evanstonians who would love to see the Harley Clark mansion saved. But with the proposed plan, I worry about the likelihood and impacts of failure because money for the city is tight. Cost projections are at the low end of recently received estimates. Expectations are quite high that Phase 1 renovation outcomes will be sufficient to generate self-sustaining revenue and attract further investment. Proposed means of achieving revenue projections are vague. Success may result in the need for expensive traffic and parking-related upgrades. And the city, in the current memorandum of understanding, takes some significant financial risks. The city, as I understand it, is entering quite a crisis period in relation to budget. And my question is, can we afford to look at this project through rose-colored glasses, especially without better financial protections for the city and without having addressed upfront already identified thorny issues that will arise not only if the project fails, but also if the project succeeds?
Great. Thank you, Peter. Robert, then John Walsh, then Claire Talon-Ruin.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name is Robert Dalrymple. I'm a member, I'm a Evanston resident of Ward 7. I'm here to express my concerns about the financial risks to the city inherent in the ordinance before you. I'm further motivated by the Evanston Roundtable article discussing multi-million-dollar city budget deficits in the foreseeable future. 3 Harley Clark renovation estimates ranging from $5 million to $7.5 million were made by reputable organizations over the last 6 years. The tenants, as you've heard, however, only promised to raise $2 million in 3 years and then an additional $3 million within 10 years. That means during the first 10 years, there will still not be enough money raised to renovate the house properly. And yet, the partially renovated mansion is expected to be financially self-sustaining during this time. On another matter, the ordinance states nothing about strategies for dealing with the competition for parking between beachgoers and event attendees, nor are there any details on the number or types of large events that can be held on the property. I urge the council to vote against the ordinance and to consider new options for renaturalizing the Harley Clark grounds and modestly increasing parking to expand public access to this unique public lakefront resource. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Robert. We got John Walsh, then Claire, then Carla Sutton.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Mr. Bobkowitz, and city staff. My name is John Walsh. I live at 2736 Hartzell Street. For 42 years, I've been a resident and voting citizen of the city of Evanston. I've been involved in different community activities for almost all of those 42 years. I am a founding member of the Evanston Lake House and Gardens Group. I'm currently the vice president of the organization. Last November, this council voted to accept the response to the request for proposal which the Evanston Lake House and Gardens Group sent in to the council, or sent to the city. It was the only response that the city received, and the council voted overwhelmingly to accept that proposal, or accept that response to the request for proposal. And the council voted to direct the city manager to negotiate a lease with the Evanston Lake House and Gardens Group. And so I say to you that the citizens who have come before you so far this evening and said that we are not adequately funded, what I say to you is that ship sailed last November when the council accepted our response. That's a position that the council has already passed over, and it's time to move forward because this our proposal has been vetted. You have seen the numbers. You have seen the information. You have seen the backing that we have. You have seen every aspect of our proposal. What I suggest to this council is that the only issue before you tonight is whether or not you agree with the terms of the lease that have been presented by city staff. It is not the time at this meeting tonight to go back and revisit whether or not this proposal should be accepted because it's been accepted. Mr. Haggerty was quoted in the local press at the time as saying that this proposal and the vote taken to the council was an exercise in civic engagement. It's a proposal that came before you with the recommendation of the city's Harley Clark Planning Committee, the Parks and Recreation Board, and the Lighthouse Landing Committee. If this council, in a vote tonight, does not agree with the terms of the lease that have been presented by the law department, then I suggest that there are some more discussions and negotiations over those terms that need to be made. It's not before this council to vote us up or down. That's been done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. We've got Claire next, then Carlos, and then Mary Rosinski.
Good evening, Council. My name is Claire Talon-Ruin. I've been here before. You know that I support the lease with the lake house, but I was thinking today about why I care, what my values lineup is, and I came up with this, that my concern and my care is related to Evanston's lack of equitable access to the lakefront. When I started the Great Lakes education program called Pipes and Precipitation in 2009, I was motivated by my children's classmates at Oakton, very few of whom had any real relationship with the lake. I had several offers to run the program as an after-school activity, but I insisted on it being an in-school program, even though it was a much larger headache. So everyone could participate and visit the lake, which now every student in District 65 does visit the lake at least once a year, but it's a drop in the bucket. So granting the lease to the Evanston Lake House and Gardens would be a bold and creative act, and one that would speak to Evanston's commitment to equity. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. All right, is Carlos here? Okay, there's Mr. Sutton. Then we've got Mary Rosinski, and then it looks like Mike Raftery. Again, I apologize for mispronouncing people's names.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Haggerty, City Manager Bobowitz, and Clerk Reed, and members of the City Council. I stand here this evening to solicit the support of the Council to approve our lease application. The concerns you have heard raised this evening are red herring concerns designed to mislead and distract. They are all addressed in the request for proposal and the lease. Let's call it what it is. Whether you're going to provide access and opportunity to the lake for all citizens, or you're going to have restrictions to the lake for all citizens. We've been here before. My family was put out of North Evanston in 1929 from up on Central Street. I don't want to go back to those kinds of restrictive movements that the city did that affected my family adversely. We've been through this before, and I don't want to go back there. We're asking our supporters to come out tonight to demonstrate the overwhelming grassroots support from the whole community. But we don't want to parade repetitive speakers up here in public comment time. Rather, at this time, we would like everyone here that supports the lease of the Evanston Lake House to stand and show their support. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Carlos. We've got Mary, then Mike Rafferty, and then Chris Foreman.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Mary Rosinski. I wanted just to remind everyone that there is a passion of the people in Evanston to fulfill a dream that many people think can't happen. I would step back to the library issue when we fought for so long to keep those branches open and expand those facilities. And, you know, there were some people who said it'll never happen. The Evanston people will not make good on those pledges, and they did. And I truly believe, having been here for over 30 years, that the people of Evanston, there's enough of us to have lots of varied interest in lots of different projects, and we can be symbiotic. There's ecotourism dollars that would come here to help the economy. We're not asking for the city to give money. You guys have been very clear. You don't want to make any of that happen, the budget constraints. But I don't want to operate our lives in Evanston based on a mentality of we can't do it, because the people in Evanston are awesome. The people on this board have the expertise and free counseling that we've been working on for 2 years, that if you guys had to hire them, you would have paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for their expertise. The numbers that came with the budget, it's not $7 million. It's $5 million from your own, from the studies. Believe me, I was there from the very beginning. And the phase 2 says $1.5 million for a new roof. That's a roof you don't spend $1.5 million on. You replace it pieces as you need it. And there's $700,000 on the phase 1 of the study that people are referring to is already in the $5 million that was there. And regarding the parking, it's in the proposal how that would happen. A lot of the things, because this has dragged on so long, people have forgotten, have been addressed in the proposal. So I agree with Carlos. There are some misinformation, maybe some red herrings, whatever, but we have addressed everything that you have done. The bar moved back. We met it. We met it. And I'm asking you to be considerate and give the people, the people with the passion to make this project happen. Believe in us, but don't take it away and don't restrict the lakefront. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Okay. Next up, we've got Mike. Okay, then Chris Foreman, then David Staub.
Hello, thank you. My name is Mike Raftery, and I live just down the street from the Evanston Lake House, and I'd like to voice my support for this project and ask you to support the lease as well. This is a facility that is craving development. Even in its current condition, with the current facilities, you still see families taking pictures. You see weddings making impromptu stops. There is a market for this facility that is craving to use it. Let this organization that's been driven by citizens give them the chance to actually turn this from what is now, it's a crumbling building, what it is. That's why it needs renovation. But don't let it crumble under your watch. Turn it around. Give these citizens that have been, like the previous speaker mentioned, have been given so much time and effort of their own personal time. Let them, they speak for all of us. Let them see this project through to fruition, and let this become a beacon for the success and for the resources that Evanston has: education, history, and ecology. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mike. Chris Foreman, David Staub, and then Jeff Smith.
Good evening. I apologize, I lost my voice, so I'll keep this brief for you all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. My name is Chris Foreman. I live in the 7th Ward, only a couple blocks from the Harley Clark Mansion. I would say that there's no playbook for how to address a situation like this, but after the last 3 years, you all could probably write it. I think that, this is a city asset that has gone through the paces within this council, within the city. Plenty of time has been given to propose solutions, and the folks from Evanston Lake House and Gardens have proposed the most suitable solution, have gone through the paces, have been challenged, and have been persistent. And I credit them with that. But I would urge you to follow the process, trust the process that you've put in place, and to approve this lease, move it to the next step. In my review, the gates are in place to protect the city should they not be able to meet their goals. As a tax-paying resident, I feel that this is not putting extra financial stress onto the city. It's not going to require any more of my taxes, to where I already pay taxes for the lighthouse, and I honestly could not tell you the really benefit that I get out of that lighthouse being there, other than it's the symbol and icon for our city. But I don't have the ability to access it with my children. I don't really know. I don't have much transparency on how the money is being spent for that building. But I think this process, that's not really the point, but the process now has been followed. I urge you to approve this lease and to follow the administrative task. As been said before, the process has already been followed, and just complete that process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. All right. We've got David Staub, Jeff Smith, and then Pete McNamara.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is David Staub, and I'm a resident of the 7th Ward. I've lived in Evanston for 35 years. I am the immediate past president of the Central Street Neighbors Association, and I'd like to speak on behalf of our association. We strongly support the lease to the Evanston Lighthouse Group. We have supported the use of the property since we first issued our adopted a position in July of 2013. So we've been going through this for 5 years. We, over the weekend, sent out an email to our members, and in 2 days, 70 of them signed a petition supporting the issuance of the lease. We think it's an appropriate use of the property. We think that preserving the historic and cultural nature and the educational services that can be provided there would all be an asset to the city of Evanston, and we urge you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Jeff Smith's next, then Pete McNamara, then Jerry Callahan, maybe?
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. No person is perfect, and few documents are. As you know, I've been an attorney for a public agency, and there's a couple things I'd never do in that role. I wouldn't bring to my client and the public a lease document that I felt put my client unreasonably at risk. And I wouldn't present such a document to the public indicating that it was acceptable to me if behind closed doors I was telling my client the opposite. I don't think the city attorneys here have done either of those things. I think that they've done their job. This council has a lot on its plate. It can make its own life a lot easier by not micromanaging real estate agreements that it pays its staff and attorneys good money to negotiate. We could debate costs of windows or roofs or other items for hours into the night, but that's not what's before the council. This council made the policy decision on how to proceed with the Harley Clark property when it took demolition off the table and delegated the deep dive on options to Alderman Ravel's committee, which then in a very transparent process at great length came up with a recommendation that this council built on by committing itself to the policy decision to issue the RFP and then instructing the staff to negotiate a lease in response to that RFP with ELHG. That lease has now been negotiated, and the council should trust that staff has presented a reasonable document. Approving a lease that reflects a series of policy decisions should be a boring, routine act by this council rather than high drama. The lease agreement has remedies for the city to address most, if not all, of the what-if scenarios. This lease is one by which the city stands to gain a net benefit. The most likely scenario is that it will receive millions of dollars of build-out for free. Can you imagine if all city decisions were subjected to the same amount of documentation, planning, and answers to all possible what-ifs that we've seen for this? When my late father passed away, I took this plaque from his desk that says, so the camera can see it, "Nothing will ever be attempted if all possible objections must be first overcome."
We're at two, Jeff. That seems like a good spot to.
I'm going to ask you, instead of saying do the right thing, to do the boring thing. By trusting the citizens and staff who have worked so hard, you will yourselves restore public trust. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. We've got Pete McNamara, then Jerry Callahan, and then Priscilla Giles.
Wasn't expecting 2 minutes, so I wrote something much shorter.
We appreciate that.
My name's Pete McNamara. I'm the treasurer for the Evanston Lake House and Gardens organization. Things that John and Jeff and others have said before you, they've said much better than I have. But we've been working on this lease together for about 6 months with city staff. We're working really hard to make this vision come to life. I think you're going to hear from a couple of the people with the organization. We have an all-star team ready to go once we get the lease signed to help with fundraising and the architects, and you're going to hear from them shortly. But the lease has been with you for about a month, and I really urge you to vote yes on this lease. We think it has met the needs of the RFP and the needs of the city. At the same time, if you're not in a position to vote yes on this lease, tell us what else you're looking for, or tell the staff what else you're looking for so that we can address it and try to come to terms with something that will help the city and help the Evanston Lake House organization fulfill the mission so that we can move forward. 6 months is a long time. Hopefully we can get this done quickly and continue moving forward. So again, I urge you to vote yes on the lease, but if you still have an issue or question or concern, bring it to me, bring it to Tom, bring it to the city staff so that we can address it. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. All right, Jerry Callahan, and again, if I've mispronounced your name, Jerry, please.
No, you did. No, that's
and then Priscilla
correct.
Giles, and then we have Sheila Sullivan.
I'm here to talk about something else, believe it or not. I'm here to discuss the floodplain ordinance amendment that's proposed. I was here for the Planning and Development Committee meeting, and because of the debate of the members of the council, there was a language added, which I appreciate, because it does recognize that revetments are allowed on the lakefront, and that was why I was here. My client has a pending application for a revetment. It's already been approved by the Army Corps, IDNR, and IEPA. So I appreciate that, and that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jerry, for coming out. Priscilla Giles, Sheila Sullivan, then Janelle Johnson.
Ms. Giles has to leave to go to another.
All right. Thank you, Carlos. Sheila?
council members. My name is Sheila Sullivan, and I'm on the board of the Southeast Evanston Association, SEA. As a neighborhood organization, we've watched the Harley Clark issue evolve and have shared in the efforts to keep it a city property leased to a nonprofit entity, Evanston Lake House and Gardens, for community programming and use. We've ridden the proverbial roller coaster over the last 4 years, holding hands with other like-minded organizations such as Evanston Parks and Lakefront Alliance and Central Street Neighbors, to name a few. Evanston Lake House and Gardens has been professional, transparent, and responsive to the demands of the City Council and the needs of the community. We believe that they have done what is necessary to ensure the success of their project. Now it's time to move ahead with approving the lease and executing it to ELHG. As you've heard of the adage, time is money. Turns out it's true. Costs only go up the longer this process drags on. So I urge you to give ELHG the opportunity to achieve their vision for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. Janelle, and then we've got, this is a little harder to read, it looks like David Letchush, and then we'll have Nicole Kustok, and then Deborah Lawrence, she'll be last. Hi, Janelle.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. I'm a resident of the 2nd Ward and board member of the Evanston Lake House and Gardens. I'm a licensed landscape architect and member of the American Society of Landscape Architects, where I work on initiatives to bring awareness and early exposure to the profession of landscape architecture and environmental design to a broad cross-section of young citizens. Having worked diligently with this group to get to this point, we are eager to move forward. We are eager to see Evanston take a step towards making access to the lake more equitable. We are eager to see Evanston preserve a landmark building by adapting its use into a public learning center where environmental education and design will be at the forefront. We are eager to restore the gardens designed by landscape architect Jens Jensen as a representation of the uniquely Midwestern design aesthetic, the prairie style. And looking forward to the future, we are eager to see the Evanston Lake House and Gardens vision become a reality where children and families from every edge of the community are welcome to this gateway to Lake Michigan. Thank you for your time and your service. I ask that you greenlight the lease for the Harley Clark Mansion.
Great. Thank you, Janelle. All right. We've got David L. next, Nicole Kustok, and then Deborah Lawrence will be last. And David, if you don't mind pronouncing your name so we can get that correct for the record.
It's easy to phoneticize. Light shoe.
Light shoot. Excellent.
Good evening, Mayor and Alderman. I'm David Lightshoe. I am a resident of 7th Ward. Just to give you, I want to give some context to the remarks I'm about to give you. I'm 40 years in risk management and insurance as a broker and consultant with a special focus in real estate development and management. My responsibilities include reviewing the insurance and indemnification terms in construction contracts and lease agreements. The indemnification terms in the MOUs written do not protect the city against claims arising out of Harley Clark. It will pick up some claims. There will be a lot that it will not. The insurance carrier is going to look at that language and say, nope, it doesn't work. One egregious example, during a period of construction, the subcontractor indemnification is limited to their negligent acts and omissions. It's very rare that somebody admits to being negligent. The courts are full of contested liability claims. Until such time that that would be established, that carrier is not going to indemnify the city of Evanston. And so during construction, you've got a greatly increased risk of accident and serious injuries. Under that scenario, the city of Evanston is going to be left to defend and indemnify for those claims. And I don't need to remind you that you have a self-insured retention of $1,250,000 per claim. It doesn't take many serious claims to add up to very large money. So I'm happy to explain this further. I don't have the ability in 2 minutes to talk you through. If anybody would like to talk further about this, I can explain it. But in the context of the indemnification terms, if I review these in my job, I would advise my bosses, do not execute this lease. You're too exposed for doing so. For that reason, I would strongly urge a vote no on the lease. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Okay, we have Nicole Kustok and then Deborah Lawrence.
Good evening, members of the council. My name is Nicole Kustok. Thank you for your service to our city and all you continue to take on. I'm a 7th Ward resident, and I'm asking you to vote no to the proposed lease with the Evanston Lake House and Gardens. To be fully transparent, I first got involved with this project because I live near Harley Clark, and I actually wanted to save the building. I'm a preservationist at heart, but then I started to look closely at the numbers. I realized there isn't a way to do it. Not one that's financially responsible or sustainable over the long term. Renovations on comparably sized buildings that, unlike this one, have been consistently maintained run $10 to $15 million. These buildings then go on to become incredibly expensive to care for. Also, Harley Clark is not a historic building. It's a local landmark, of which we have 800 in town. I do want to take this opportunity and say how much I respect the members of the Lake House Group. I know many of them personally, and I admire their time and their efforts. With that said, I do think that every single dollar raised comes from somewhere. As a community, we can't risk letting local causes like Family Focus, Robert Crown, or the proposed Y renovation suffer. These are need-based community programs that rely on continued donations. Evanston families depend on them. Our friends and neighbors use them. And our city needs every philanthropic dollar that goes to them to continue. I want to close by saying a 10-year time frame for raising money is simply way too long. You can't put a public park and beach under construction for a decade. That is a restriction on the use of the public use of the lakefront. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Okay, and last we have Deborah Lawrence.
Good evening. I didn't expect to be here or do this. I responded to an email to defend the Evanston Lake House and Gardens, and so I would just like to offer my own testimony. I love living in Evanston. I love the Lake House. I think it's a slice of history that needs to be cherished, and once it's gone, we cannot bring it back. So whatever we decide to do, we should do it very carefully, very gingerly, and give as much time possible to consider what we're doing if we remove it. Anyway, but I do feel that it's a slice of history that contributes to the elegance of the lakefront, even though it's shabby chic. It's untapped potential as a destination for recreation, cultural events, and simple enjoyment. I just think that we need to charge for everything. I see a semi-private croquet club, for instance, equipment rentals, maybe an ice skating pond in the wintertime. But there can be all kinds of income-generating events along the lakefront. I'm not studied in this area, and I apologize for that, but I do love Evanston, and I am a preservationist at heart, too. And so I just wanted to speak on behalf of that lovely mansion that's crumbling, and through my rose-colored glasses, I intend to defend it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Deborah, for those eloquent words, and for everybody for coming out and being really thoughtful. This is a tough decision, right? That's before the council, and I think that in public comment tonight, people, did a great job articulating the benefits of this as well as the concerns. So what we're going to do now is we're going to roll into the special order of business, which is the first thing. Let me get my agenda here, which I believe is Harley Clark. Yes. So the special order of business is SP1, Ordinance 42-0-18, lease of the city-owned property located at 2603 Sheridan Road to the Evanston Lake House and Gardens Group. Obviously, this has been a matter of discussion for a little bit, so the way that we will discuss this special order of business is Erica Storley, who has been sort of the lead on the city staff side on this, will be making some comments, and then the Evanston Lake House and Gardens Group, the leadership, I believe it's Tom Hodgman, I will be given no more than 10 minutes to make some remarks as well as answer some questions that the council may have. I'm granting this because this is a special order of business, but also because this is an item that did not go up through subcommittee where such a conversation would normally occur. So, Ms. Storley, thank you for being here.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Manager, City Clerk, and members of the City Council. I'm Erica Storley, the Assistant City Manager. As you know, I've been working with the Evanston Lake House and Gardens Group over the past few months to put together the lease that you see before you this evening. We've made a few changes since the last time we met earlier in March. They're outlined in the memo that I've included in the packet. Materially, the only one to note is the change, the increase in the fundraising that the group has held themselves to a benchmark on, which has been discussed already or has been brought about tonight in public comment. So I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the lease and then hand it over to Tom.
All right, so let's go ahead. Let's go ahead just to Tom, and then we'll open it up to discussions and questions amongst the council members. Okay. Welcome, Tom, and thank you for all the hard work you and everybody have been working on to try and bring a solution here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Manager. A lot's already been said, so I'm going to try to cut this as short as possible. And I have a few other folks that I'm going to introduce that will participate, but we'll keep it to 10 minutes. I trust you've all reviewed the RFP and the lease, so I'll spare you any lengthy review there. But I do want to touch on 3 key points: people, our plan, and process. We've assembled a very capable team to help execute this plan. We have people on our board like Bill Brown, who spent 20 years managing facilities at the Botanic Gardens and Lincoln Park Zoo. We're working with Jens Jensen, the great-great-grandson of Jens Jensen, who designed the landscape originally. He's a landscape architect. You heard from Janelle Johnson, Evanston's own, tonight. She works on diversity and inclusion issues with the American Society of Landscape Architects. We have a really strong team of people. We've also selected some top-notch consultants. McGuire Ogleski is our architect. Sarah Shastock we've selected to run our fundraising campaign. Kirkland & Ellis is our legal counsel. We have a really strong bench of partners. You've heard from a lot of them tonight. I'm not going to go through them all. They're in the RFP. They're on our website. We also have a lot of individuals in our community that support our plan. The nonprofit partnership was a top choice in the city's survey in 2015. 410 people signed our most recent letter of support, which I gave to Clerk Reed to enter into the record. You should have all received a copy. You also received one in your email, asking you to move forward with the lease. We have $12,000 in the bank today. We have another $90,000 in pledges. That's just waiting for a lease. In fact, I have 2 checks right here in my hand for $18,000. I can cash them as soon as there's a lease in place. And interest is growing recently as we've been making progress. As the lease is moving forward, interest is growing. In addition to these pledges, just this weekend we received a new matching grant, which I have right here, in the amount of $10,000 from Evanston resident Ellen Alexander. She's in the crowd here tonight. Really exciting gift. There's going to be more where this came from. This is not the first. It's not the largest. We also have a grant proposal for $15,000 that's in the second round of consideration by a foundation, but they're understandably waiting for the council to take action on the lease. To complement all these qualified people who have shown support and are working on this plan, it's modeled on other successful examples that have been successful in other places around the country. It's been thoroughly vetted. You've heard that tonight. And we've arrived here tonight through a public process. You've heard about that tonight, and I don't really need to belabor that any more than what you've heard and what you know. But now it's time to take that final step. We need a lease to move this forward. And if there are changes to the lease that were negotiated with the city staff and that they agreed to, we are, of course, open to consider them, but we can't negotiate in the dark. We need to know what you'll say yes to, and we can move things forward. So we ask that the city become the partner that we and donors are waiting for tonight, and we request that you follow through with the process that you have defined, which reflects the wishes of the community. Doing so will send a strong message to donors and partners that the city is holding up its end of the bargain and willing to make the project a success. A no vote or further delay sends the wrong message to our community and the broader donor community considering working with the city on other projects. It will erode trust for Evanston Lake House and other projects with the city as well. We have tremendous possibilities here in front of us to convert Harley Clark into Evanston Lake House. You've heard about experiential education, year-round programmings, landscape architecture, giving everyone a home on the lake. And you've also heard about much hand-wringing that's occurred, about downside scenarios and what-ifs. But what about success? We must not be afraid to imagine success. And ultimately, success of Evanston Lake House is success for all of Evanston. And we can do this together, and we'll be a better community for it. I now want to use the rest of our time to introduce two of our key partners. After a formal search process, we selected Sarah Shastok to help develop our campaign and McGuire Gillespie, a local architecture firm, to provide architectural services. And I've asked them each to make some brief comments here tonight regarding both fundraising, which I know a lot of people have on their mind, and the building repairs. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Sarah Shastok to come up and use part of our time.
Good evening. Thank you for the time to speak about this tonight. Why am I excited to be involved with Evanston Lake House? And why do I think this project will succeed? Its lake water-centered approach to environment and science education are new and can attract new donors, while the focus on equitable access and citywide engagement are pure Evanston. The plan aligns with the city commitments to a more sustainable and livable community. These are smart people who've been working on this project. They've done everything you've asked of them. That is a good foundation for working together with you. The board has built impressive partnerships to fulfill the vision, and Great Lakes projects are attractive now. I've seen many big projects launched at the Community Foundation, and this one has the chemistry. The fundraising goals, to my mind, are realistic for the project and achievable within the time frame. But I want to address the contrary views. I think that's important. Other groups will lose if this goes ahead. What if some donors don't support this? Could there be enough money in Evanston without them? And why haven't there been more gifts since November when the council accepted this proposal? I want to say that I do not believe that giving in Evanston is a zero-sum game. Evanstonians have responded generously to visions embodied in the Robert Crown Center, the new YOU Center, the Evanston History Center, McGaw YMCA campaigns, a new YWCA swimming pool, and the new fundraising entity, the ETHS Foundation, has raised more than $4.5 million over 10 years. And then there's this, back in 2000, with barely $2 million in assets. As the staunchest supporters didn't think the Evanston Community Foundation would ever grow to $10 million, but it has now assets of $25 million. Total gifts to the Community Works funds alone exceeded $7 million in 8 of these years. At the same time, the other campaigns have also flourished. Our history here shows, given the right opportunities, more of us are giving and more of us are giving more. Absent a lease, the board postponed individual asks in deference to the council's process. Still, unsolicited gifts like those Tom showed you tonight are coming in. I think the board's restraint shows responsible management, while the earlier $100,000 in pledges indicates strong community support. Not seeking new gifts until there's a signed lease is fair to donors and strong fundraising practices. I urge you now to honor the results of your process with your vote tonight to move forward. The board and I are very much ready and looking forward to working with you to make this project a success that we know it can be for all of us. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Just so you guys are aware, Tom, you got two minutes.
Okay, I'll be brief.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Mark Igleski. I'm a partner with McGuire Igleski and Associates. We are an architectural firm here in Evanston. We've been in business for 18 years here in Evanston. My partner and I each have over 30 years of experience individually, and we specialize in historic preservation and the repair and rehabilitation of historic and old buildings. We were part of the team that assessed the Harley Clark Mansion in 2012 for the city. And at that time, we found that the house, in our words, has what I would say good bones. I don't think anyone in this room would disagree that it doesn't need some work. It's been vacant. It's an old building, but it's solid. And in my mind, the marriage of a good, solid, important building like this with the excellent program that this group is putting forward to try to breathe new life into this structure is a perfect combination of the two. It's a very appropriate reuse. It's a very feasible project, and we are ready to help this team move forward with it. And I urge your support and vote yes tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Okay. All right. So thank you for that overview and just sort of an update on what's going on with the group. I'll ask the council now if there are questions that folks have for any, whether it's Ms. Storley or anybody from the other group, or we can go in discussion. Let's start with you, Alderman Ravel.
Okay. I don't want to cut off my colleagues from being able to ask questions, but I'll go ahead with sort of some personal remarks. I know that many of us on the dais, as well as many people in this room, have been through many long discussions about the future of the Harley Clark property. But quite frankly, I'm relatively new to the whole saga, and so I hope you'll indulge me while I review a couple of key historical points. So in 2008, the City Council unanimously approved a lakefront master plan to provide a blueprint for future renovation projects on Evanston's lakefront. The planning process took over 18 months, as our planning processes seem to do. It included the involvement of a wide range of citizens in a long series of meetings. So many hours went into that to arrive at a vision of what the lakefront could or should be. With respect to the Lighthouse Beach area, the master plan envisioned, quote, expansion of the environmental programming provided there, and it anticipated partnerships with a variety of environmental organizations to create opportunities that would, quote, increase the level of understanding of the lakefront environment and increase appreciation for the lakefront. The master plan called for restoration of the historic structures at Harley Clark and the Jens Jensen landscape, and they proposed using the coach house for a cafe or a gift shop and for making the property available for low-impact public functions, with the proceeds of these going to support the restoration of the buildings and the grounds. And the plan also noted that parking for special events could not be provided on the site, but would have to be arranged by such options as a parking shuttle or a valet service. So really, the elements of what you are seeing in the Evanston Lake House and Gardens proposal was very much part and parcel of the 2008 Lakefront Master Plan that this council approved. The second historical moment that I just want to revisit quickly is the council discussion in fall of 2015 of two proposals for the future use of the Harley Clark property. And both of these called for a process that would try to identify a nonprofit partner interested in using the property. And as my colleagues know, those proposals were tabled and formal discussion stopped at that point in fall of 2015. I joined the City Council a few months later, having watched the discussion of Harley Clark very much from the sidelines. But early in my tenure, Tom Hodgman and a Lake House colleague met with me to discuss their vision for the Harley Clark property. To say that I was skeptical is probably an understatement, but I was impressed with their passion for transforming the property into an educational and cultural asset for the broader community. So that brings us to the most recent chapter. It's already getting to be old. Start in September 2016, when we took Alderman Wilson's proposal off the table and directed the Parks and Recreation Board and the Lighthouse Landing Committee to develop a plan for the future operation of the property. Several members of those two committees agreed to serve on the Harley Clark Planning Committee, which I chaired. We met regularly for, I believe, 7 months or so, during which time we had extensive discussion with Lake House representatives and with community groups, all eager to partner with Lake House in developing an experiential educational and community programming center for a restored Harley Clark. Ultimately, the planning committee, enthusiastically endorsed the Lake House proposal in June of last year and recommended the City Council enter into a lease agreement at that time with Lake House. And as you know, it was decided instead to engage in an RFP process to see whether any other nonprofits had an interest in leasing the property. Evanston Lake House submitted the only responsive proposal, and in November, we moved forward with that proposal by directing the city manager to develop a lease of the Harley Clark property to Evanston Lake House for the creation of an environmental education center. So before us tonight is that lease. The red line markup lease that's in our packets indicates some proposed changes to the lease that was presented at our last meeting. A final benchmark was added to Section 4 to make it clear that Lake House is committed to raising a minimum of $4.8 million for restoration of the building, and that was part of their response to the RFP, that they would raise that much money. As currently drafted, the lease gives Evanston Lake House 3 years to raise $2 million for code compliance and to get the building ready to start having the environmental programming that they envision. If the Lake House folks fail to meet the annual benchmarks, then the city can terminate the lease. Evanston taxpayers are not being asked to contribute to this fundraising. Under the terms of the lease, the city will continue to mow the lawn and trim the trees around the building, as we already do as part of our general maintenance of the parkland. The park space around the building is going to remain public and is not going to be used by Evanston Lake House, and so it makes sense that the city continues to maintain these public spaces. So let me just go back to the whole question of the benchmark and whether the fundraising campaign is aggressive enough. I think we've heard some concerns tonight, and I think some of my colleagues have those concerns. I think there may be some other concerns about other portions of the lease, but if we do have those concerns, I'd like to hear what those are tonight as part of our discussion, so that we can address those concerns and move forward. And whether we make those revisions tonight or whether we move to hold this so that we can make those revisions and come back in a couple of weeks, I think we'll talk about that as we move forward with our discussion.
Great. Thank you, Alderman Ravel. Alderman Wilson?
Thank you. As I assume anybody who's been involved in this process is aware, I've been deeply involved and committed to the unrestricted public use and access to the property. And going back a number of years, meeting with, talking to members of this specific organization. And, you know, so I have a job to do. We all have a job to do. 9 of us up here doing a job. And sometimes my job doesn't necessarily mean that I get to do things exactly the way I want to personally. So part of my job is doing the boring stuff, as one of the speakers mentioned. The lease, I do think, has a couple of very, very serious problems. I expect maybe most of the supporters who are here haven't read those parts of the lease, so they're not aware of them. But I'll point out a couple of things that are particularly of concern to me. The risk of loss provisions I find to be not acceptable. What it requires is if there's a casualty at the property with damage up to 85% of the value of the property, the city has to pay for that. So that's during the 40-year term of the lease. And on a lease where we're charging $1 a year, that's not acceptable. If, God forbid, there's a fire or a tornado hits or something and knocks the building down, this lease requires us to, within 180 days, accepting the permit periods, et cetera, restore the building. So I really don't think the taxpayers would be pleased if in 23 years there's a catastrophic fire and we have to go to the taxpayers and say, oh, you know what, this building's going to cost $10 million now to repair, and we have to do it in 6 months. I think that would not be a prudent provision. These things can be addressed with insurance. Hopefully the organization can, figure out a plan or a method to cover that insurance. But given the fact that it's a $1 a year lease, I don't want the city to have to incur the costs of covering those insurance issues. The other really big point for me, and a lot of people mention the idea that this plan was approved. I agree. I voted for it. I voted for the proposal, and I was excited about the proposal. I've been looking for a solution to this for a long time, but the proposal had some specific financial information in it. For example, the proposal had estimated that $4.8 million would be raised in the first 2 years, and about in the neighborhood of $6 million would be raised in the first 3 years. So that it's wildly different, 4.8 versus 500,000 in the first 2 years. So to me, it's really not the proposal anymore. It's a counter proposal, and so that it's a fundamental change. It's roughly 12% of what was represented. I've heard from different people in the community on the explanation for that. I think it's a legitimate explanation. Part of that is the idea that they can't really count pledges as cash in the bank. I understand that that's a problem, but when I voted for this, my expectation was a certain amount of money would be in place to do the work, not that it would take 10 years to finish the work. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, 3 years down the road, they're going to have $6 million or so, and we're going to get the stuff done in that kind of a time frame. So when you're looking at 10 years, it's a very different proposal. So those are my two, I guess I'll call them big ticket items, and I'm not sure if others have things as well. But again, like I said, we voted on something and approved it, but this is not the thing that we approved back in November.
Okay. Thank you, Alderman Wilson. Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Harley Clark site has provided the community with a rare opportunity to consider new options for the city's lakefront. And during the past 6 years as I think the resident historic preservationist on the council, I've enjoyed discussing new possibilities, and I've listened with interest to the many suggestions for the property. Before us tonight is one of those suggestions in the form of a lease agreement with Evanston Lake House and Gardens. As their proposal has taken shape, I've watched carefully to make sure it will be financially viable and have limited impact on the city budget. Accordingly, City Representative raised the fundraising goals in an effort to ensure that the project can be successful and sustainable and not require a civic bailout. At present, however, it is clear to me, despite the project's leadership's best efforts, the fundraising targets, including establishing a permanent endowment, cannot be met successfully. Additionally, the decision by Lake House not to disclose the donor list lacks the transparency that we expect from such public endeavors. And I have heard firsthand from many potentially large donors who have declined the opportunity to support the project over questions about its financial feasibility. This is unfortunate, but without sufficient funds to meet the project's goals, we will be putting the city at risk for the project's costs, or worse, putting our treasured lakefront in peril. Should the lake house lack operating funds to sustain itself, the most logical option is for its operators to increase the number of revenue-generating functions and open the door, quite literally, to becoming a de facto commercial events center. That would both betray the lake house's mission and violate the lakefront master plan's vision of the lakefront as a place to be passively enjoyed by the community. That is a risk that would endanger the community's most valuable natural resource, and a risk I'm not willing to take. I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into the project, and I wish you all well. But on behalf of the residents of the First Ward, tonight I'm going to be voting no.
All right. Is there other discussion, comments, questions? Alderman Fleming?
Yeah, I feel like this has gone on for a really long time, so I wanted to give some explanation. So I was the one no vote for the RSP or for the lease because I had some concerns. Looking at this, aside from what Alderman Alderman Wilson brought up, I think my first meeting with Tom and Alex Block, I asked about insurance because it is an old building and, you know, things happen. And there was a conversation there about my request that the group take on some insurance for the building. My logic was, one, it's, you know, hopefully nothing happens, but something could happen. And two, whenever I've signed a lease for something, whether I'm using it or not, I take on responsibility for that. So I convey that that was my expectation of the group taking on the building. Now I'm looking at the lease. I'm not a fundraiser. I don't know how much money is in the universe for this building. I know in looking at the building, I know in remodeling my own house, it went, you know, way over what I thought it would. And so I'm concerned that $3 million, $5 million over 10 years seems like a low ballpark for improvement, just based on when I look at the outside. But in section 11F, I guess it is, there's this line here that I don't remember seeing before, saying that the tenant would like to have the option of terminating the lease in the event of any major environmental issue that's discovered that will cost over $150,000. I know from my limited time here, we often go into contracts with contractors for whatever the amount of money is, and we get a change order because they found something when they opened up a wall. And I'm assuming, given the age and deterioration of this building, that something will be found, hopefully not over the 150. But I am concerned if the tenant is looking to have an option of terminating the lease if they find something. I can't imagine them not finding something once they start working on this property. So that is another concern because, you know, if they get going on the remodel, then they find something, you know, ideally they wouldn't pull out, but if they do, that leaves this council back to where it was several years ago with trying to decide what to do with this building. And I guess I don't, and I explained this to the two people in my ward who called to voice their concern or their support for this building today, that I just feel like my role is to make decisions that I feel like are good government, and part of good government is making decisions that keep the taxpayers protected and that also move the city forward, not just continuing things, because that does not only wear on the council, but it lacks transparency, and it also, you know, causes you all to be very frustrated when we don't make firm decisions. But we have to make firm decisions based on what's in front of us, not based on what could be.
Thank you, Alderman Fleming. Alderman Braithwaite?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to pick up where Alderman Fleming left off, I think this is definitely a sign of more to come. Tough decisions that our city council is going to have to make, just given the current budget conversations that we're having. Just quickly, I want to acknowledge the folks in the crowd and thank you very much for your commitment to this issue. I also want to acknowledge Alderman Revelle for your advocacy on this project, as well as the way you've represented your residents. I want to thank Alderman Wilson for your leadership on this. You've really helped me to look at some details that I'm not very familiar with, and I just want to say thank you to Don. I have two residents in the crowd that I want to acknowledge that reached out to me over the weekend, Sheriff Sostek and Janelle Johnson, for helping me to understand all the moving pieces of this. I also fall into the crowd. It is very difficult for me to support this, just given our budget priorities that we have facing us over the next couple of months. I counted 20 names out of this list that I actually recognize, and maybe 5 that I have in my phone. And one of the issues that one of the speakers brought up before, just knowing the way Evanston is, I don't see any of our major fundraisers who have supported our major projects in town, given the fact that we have library and Crown and a few other things that we need to tackle. For me, they're the projects, and again, a resident mentioned this, that I feel, and I'm speaking for myself, that personally fill the equity gap. Family Focus, the McGaw YMCA, just to name a few. But the importance of pointing out that I only recognize 20 names on this list, that means that there's a whole slew of names and new faces that are getting engaged in Evanston, which really excites me. And so I know this isn't, it doesn't address what you're here for tonight, but I really hope that you stay involved and engaged. I mean, if you care and if you concerned about equity, as it was articulated tonight, and if you're really concerned about the preservation and also the teaching that can come, I think that that can still take place outside of the physical structure of the building. I don't believe that it's going to be limited to that. So that is my encouragement for you. Often we are on council, every single week we vote on things that we don't get, and I don't think people really understand that. And this is one of those moments that we're just going to have to deal with moving forward. So again, I thank you all for your commitment, and yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Alderman Braithwaite. Alderman Nguyen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I commend this group for its energy and its good ideas. I have been on the council through this from the very beginning, even when we actually thought we were going to have the state of Illinois run a Great Lakes initiative out of the mansion. So I would like to see this Evanston Lake House and Gardens succeed very, very much. I think the ideas that you're presenting are forward-thinking. They're incredibly engaging. They're new and innovative. But I do have some concerns. I think some of the concerns that Alderman Wilson raised are my concerns as well. I think 10 years is too long to raise $5 million. It feels, at the point of 10 years, it's open-ended. It just feels open-ended. I would need it to be shortened in order to support this. So that is a significant concern of mine. Sarah Shostak is an expert, and I'd like to hope that she's correct at all of this, and then those new donors can be found, and that Evanston will continue to do more and give more to support this. So I am concerned about reaching those goals, but we have to have those goals met in a shorter period of time. The other issue, and I know someone said this, who cares about the details? Lawyers care about the details, and it's the details that catch you up. The issues about insurance coverage, potential risk to the city, liability problems. We are all fiduciaries here up on the council. Those have to be addressed in a way that the city is protected. As much as I want this project to succeed, my first duty is to protect the citizens of Evanston from potential risks that we could avoid. And so those issues would need to be addressed before I could support this project as well. I commend everyone for the hard work that's been put in. I think it's been very imaginative and very creative, and I want to see it succeed, but we need to get these other details, and they're significant ones, worked out, because I can't support something that I can already see presents significant risk to the city when there are other ways to draft this in such a way that the city is not exposed. I also do want to echo Alderman Braithwaite in commending Alderman Revelle, who has really done a remarkable job with one of the most difficult issues we have faced here on the council. And frankly, it is because of Alderman Revelle that I'm still listening and still open to the discussion. So thank you, Alderman Revelle.
Thank you, Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Thank you. So I, too, was really excited about this proposal and the reception from the group when we talked about it some time ago. I'm disappointed that the lease proposal isn't coming stronger, and all informed opinions that I've received about this lease proposal as you've heard tonight, leaves our city and the taxpayers exposed, likely financially responsible. One challenge that I gave to all of the supporters and concern is donor fatigue. And I was told that there's not donor fatigue. There's plenty of folks that support it. I have real concerns about Family Focus, a building that has programming for our vulnerable families, one that is historically significant as well as architecturally significant. And I have asked, how will Family Focus end up in this whole scenario if we are starting a campaign for the lake house? And I've been told over and over again that there won't be a problem. My disappointment is that when we had a community invitation to come out and support Family Focus, we had 5 people that showed up in support of preservation, which are first steps towards saving the building. And so I'm concerned that we are using equity and inclusion sometimes to push forth our projects and agendas, and we're not really doing what we can to work on equity and inclusion for families that need us most. So I just want to kind of put that challenge before you as you are considering your advocacy and where your funding dollars are going, because we have some families that are in crisis, and those are some opportunities that I believe are being overlooked in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Roos-Simmons. Alderman Ravel.
Only if nobody else has anything to say. Do you have any other lights, Mr. Mayor?
No, I was going to pose a question that you had posed earlier.
Okay.
So, Alderman Ravel, when she started off, mentioned that she was concerned, or she knew that some council members had concerns, and those have been expressed up here this evening. And one of the points you raised, the questions you raised, is, what proposed actions, could be taken in regards to the lease agreement, and would those, if those were taken, get you to yes to move forward with this agreement?
Right. Well, I think we've heard about 2 points in particular that are very important to address: the fundraising schedule for one, and secondly, making sure that all the provisions that deal with casualty and insurance are, I think, get a major overhaul so that there is no risk to the city. So I would say those are the 2 main things I've heard, and I would be hopeful that if we address those, we could get to yes. So I will make a motion that we hold this item until 2 weeks from tonight.
Second.
Point of order. Point of order.
Alderman Rainey.
Mr. Mayor, you may not hold over a special order of business, and therefore I would like to move that we vote on this question before us, the lease for Harley Clark.
Okay. So,
Mr. Mayor, good evening. Michelle Mason-Cup. The City Council Rule 18.12 indicates, at the request of 2 aldermen, any matter except a special order of business may be held over.
all right. So thank you, Alderman Rainey, and thank you for that clarification there. And so everybody in the audience and at home understands that.
Call the question.
I got Alderman Nguyen, and then we'll call the question.
Mr. Mayor, I think that that was something that Alderman Ravel and I both had overlooked about with the special order of business, and I think that the appropriate motion for a special order of business would be, when there are still questions to be answered, would be a motion to table it to a date certain. And
But this is a special order of business. It is treated very differently than.
Alderman Rainey, may I ask I would like to ask council if that is the correct motion, Ms. Mason-Cup.
has it been tabled in the past?
No. No, it has not been tabled yet.
It's just a question.
A special order of business has been set for a date certain. This could go on for a lifetime.
So, the previous rule speaks to special orders of business. 18.11 indicates any matter before the council may be made a special order of business for any future time by the action of the council. It refers to city council consideration to a specified date, previously agreed to by the majority of the council. If the council seeks to table, the rule indicates 18.6, a motion to table any matter is not debatable. If adopted by the majority of the aldermen present, all further debate shall end.
So therefore, a motion,
so you need six, you need
5.
Majority 5.
So we need to vote on whether to table it to the next meeting, to a date specific.
But we can overrule that, can we not?
You could overrule that by not passing it. You know, if it passes 5-4, then it's tabled. If it doesn't, then we take the vote. Okay, so.
and it would be to table it to a date certain. What is the next date of the next council meeting? The 23rd.
Do you want to put it forward, Alderman Nguyen?
Yeah.
Oh. All right, Alderman Fleming, we'll get our questions answered and then we'll.
I'm sorry, I have a question. So, for my clarification, so
It's not debatable.
I'm not debating the table. I'm not debating the table, and I have a question about the lease.
All right, point of
So-
order I can take, apparently.
Can I do it? Okay. So the Alderman Ravel, you're suggesting that they would alter the lease to address the.
Yeah, it's not a point of order right there, though, Alderman Fleming.
So I can't. Well, I
So,
wanna
yeah,
table it.
because
All
it's
right,
been,
so
because it's been tabled. All right, Alderman Nguyen, do you want to put forward
Yes,
the
I would
point?
move that we table the adoption of the lease for the Harley Clark Mansion until the date of April 23rd.
Is there a second? Okay, Clerk Reed, could you take the roll on this?
Alderman Fisk. Alderman Braithwaite.
No.
Alderman Nguyen.
Aye.
Alderman Wilson. Alderman Ruth Simmons.
No.
Alderman Suffredin. Alderman Ravel. Alderman Rainey.
No.
Alderman Fleming.
No.
Okay, so the vote to extend or to a date specific to the 23rd fails on a 5-4 vote. Okay, so
I'll call the question.
if there's no further conversation, if someone wants to call,
I'll
the
call
question.
the question.
Okay. Okay. So, do I have a second? Okay. So, Clerk Reed, could you go ahead and take the vote? And this is the vote on Ordinance 42-0-18, the lease of city-owned property at 2603 Sheridan Road.
Alderman Fisk. No. Alderman Braithwaite.
No.
Alderman Nguyen.
No, not as it's written.
Alderman Wilson.
No.
Alderman Ruth Simmons.
No.
Alderman Suffredin.
Yes.
Alderman Ravel. Alderman Rainey.
No.
Alderman Fleming.
No.
Okay, so SP1 Ordinance 42-0-18, lease of the city-owned property located 2603 Sheridan Road to the Evanston Lake House and Gardens Group fails on a vote of 2-7. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, for all the work that has been done. We're going to move on now to the consent agenda. Alderman Rainey, if you could take us through. Is Alderman
Fleming.
Excuse me, Alderman Fleming. You're now in the chair of the Administration and Public Works Committee. Congratulations. Could you take us through M1 and then through APW, please?
Yeah, M1 is the approval of minutes of the regular City Council meeting, March 12th, 2018, and March 19th, 2018. Just keep going.
Keep going. Okay. Yep.
Payroll dated February 19th through March 14th, 2018, in the amount of $2,762,402.14. Payroll March 5th through March 18th, 2018, $2,780,773.27. Bills list dated March 27th, 2018, $1,399,302.89, and bills list April
Order
10th,
order in the chamber.
2018,
Order in
$4
the
million.
chamber.
The city is on the hook for all of it. I just want to make that perfectly clear.
$4 million.
Thank you.
$4,292,911.16.
Okay.
Item 3.
Well, let's
Want to vote on that?
let's stop there. Wait a second. Do we not have any conflict issues?
No, not this
evening. Okay, keep going.
A3 renewal agreement with Express Press to supply clothing for Parks, Recreation, and Community Service summer program. That is for action. Agreement with Evanston Township High School to supply lunch meals for the 2018 summer food program. That is for action. 3.3, the Sidewalk Cafe at French Press Cafe, located at 517 Dempster. A3.4, the Sidewalk Cafe at Rock and Ravioli, located at 1012 Church Street. 3.5, contract to provide a street condition evaluation and right-of-way asset management with Infrastructure Management Services, LLC, for action. 3.6, contract extension for 2018 with Parrot Pavement Maintenance for 2018 crack sealing program. Also for action. 3.7, contract extension for 2018 with Precision Pavement Marking Incorporated for pavement marking program. 3.18 is a single source purchase of a riding mower from Renders Incorporated for action. Sorry, let me check one thing. 3.9 is purchase of vehicle for Evanston Police Department from Curry Motors for action. 3.10 I'm going to take off consent agenda. We had a change in price by staff, so we need to vote on that again. 3.11 is purchase of 3 vehicles for the Public Works Agency from Monroe Truck Equipment, National Fleet Auto Group, and JX Peterbilt. 3.12, single source purchase of Ford OME parts and vehicle service from Gulf Mill Ford for action. 3.13, agreement with Full Throttle Marine and Watercraft Maintenance and Repair Service. 3.14, agreement with HOH Water Technology Incorporated for chemical water treatment of HVAC equipment in various city facilities for action. A4 is ordinance 48-0-18, approving the construction of local improvement known as Evanston Special Assessment number 1523 is for action. And I'm sorry, for introduction, I'm sorry.
And that's ordinance 49-0-18.
Sorry, thank you. A5 is ordinance 38-0-18, amending city. Oh, that's being removed. A6 is ordinance 43-0-18, decreasing the number of Class C liquor licenses for thank you. At 1633 Orrington Avenue, that's for introduction and action. A17, ordinance 44-0-18, decreasing the number of Class D liquor licenses for Las Palmas of Evanston at 817 University Place for introduction and action. Ordinance A8 is ordinance 36-0-18, decreasing the number of Class C1 liquor licenses for La Machina Cafe at 1620 Orrington. A9 is ordinance 37-0-18, increasing the number of Class C liquor licenses for La Machina Restaurant at 1620 Orrington. That's for action. A10 is ordinance 27-0-18, which is the lease of room space at the Lorraine H. Morton Civic Center to the League of Women Voters for action. A11 is ordinance 18-0-18, amending City Code Section 1-17-1, adding subsection contractor debarment, suspension, and prohibited contracts. That is for action. And that is it.
Terrific.
Move agenda.
Thank you, Alderman Fleming. Alderman Fisk, could you take us through planning and development?
Yes, thank you. P1 is grant renewal for the Homeless Management Information System to the Alliance to End Homelessness in Suburban Cook County. Staff and the Housing and Homelessness Commission recommend the approval of a renewal grant of $20,500 from the Affordable Housing Fund. Let's see. That grant will enable the Alliance to access $82,000 in HUD funds, and that is for action. Ordinance P2 is...
Can you remove that, please?
Sure. Okay, so that's off the
I'm
agenda.
sorry, there's a hold on P1?
No. What?
Or
what did
P2?
you
I'm
want to
sorry,
take off?
P2 you're taking off?
Well, it's just for introduction. I guess I have a question.
The Frio Gelato?
Yes.
Okay, P2.
Okay.
I just have a question.
She has a question. Yeah.
I have a question.
That's fine, and then we'll cover it and then vote on it later. Okay.
P3, Ordinance
Can you hold
47
that one? Can you take that off, please?
Oh, that's been held in committee.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
P4 is Ordinance 40018. It's also been held in committee. P5, Ordinance 39018, granting major zoning relief for a new two-story, 134,200 square foot community center at 1801 Main Street, the new Robert Crown Community Center. The Zoning Board of Appeals and city staff recommend adoption. Let's see. I think that pretty much says it. It's for action tonight. P6 is Ordinance 12018, amending the City Code Title 4, Chapter 13, floodplain regulations. That is for action tonight. Whoops.
Excuse me. For P3, I don't have that as a hold.
What we decided was to hold that in committee and not send it back to the Plan Commission. So we're going to get more
I
information.
think that was P4, right?
Well, it's both of them. The definition of coach house.
In my notes, I just had Alderman Wilson had some comments to the ordinance, but it was moved introduction.
Okay. Did we do
Did
that?
you vote to hold it?
I'm,
The request was to send it back to the Plan Commission, and we decided to hold it in P&D.
That's
okay, if that was P4, okay,
That's
then
P4, the
P3,
front porches.
we held P3 in committee.
Okay.
So
It was?
I think so. Anybody else there? Was anybody else at the meeting that remembers what's going on? It was introduced? Okay, all right. I'm glad we're all still here tonight.
Let's
This is a good
let's
thing.
clarify this for those out in the audience and,
Okay.
and those at home.
All
So
right.
P3, start over, Alderman.
All
Fisk.
right.
P3.
The ordinance 47018, amending the definition of coach house, is up for introduction. So we're introducing it tonight.
Okay, so I have a question for that one.
Okay, so we'll take that off.
Off. Yep. Okay.
Okay.
And then do P4.
P4 is held in committee.
P4 is held in committee. Okay. P5.
Okay, we did P5, and there were no one wanted to take
you're
that
right.
off, and P6,
Yes.
no
You're
one
right.
wanted
You
to
did
take
that too.
off. Okay.
All right, Alderman. Thank you, Alderman Fisk. Alderman Wilson, you want to take us through economic development? Excuse me,
Happy to do it.
Alderman Rainey. You are the chair, I guess, of economic development. My mistake. Did it just?
Not anymore.
See, I think all our chairs are changing. That's why we're a little confused up here.
Is it mine now?
I think
Or we haven't had. Okay.
I will go ahead
I'll
and
take
do
it. I got it,
economic.
I got it.
Okay.
Okay, Economic Development Grant for Evanston Equity in the Arts Hiring Program is Economic Development Committee and staff are recommending that the council approve funding totaling $25,000 to Mudlark Theater to hire additional administrative staff. The Equity in the Arts Program is building capacity and diversity for Mudlark's management organization because candidates must be local minority residents. This is for action.
You take it off, please.
All right, so that's off. 01. Okay.
Apologize.
Can I have a move for the consent agenda?
Into a second.
Okay, Clerk Reed, could you take the roll, please?
Alderman Fisk. Aye. Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Wilson. Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Aye.
Alderman Sufferton.
Aye.
Alderman Ravel.
Aye.
Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
And Alderman Fleming.
Aye.
All right, the consent agenda passes with a 9-0 vote. We'll now go to the items that were removed. Alderman Fleming, if you could take us through A310, which is the first item removed.
Yeah, A310, I was given a corrected price by the staff, so it's the purchase of vehicle for the Evanston Fire Department from Foster Coach Sales. In the agenda, it was listed for an amount $291,730. However, the actual amount is $300,055. The additional charge that was not added was for an extended warranty at the amount of $7,825 and an extra tire at the amount of $500. So the new amount for the purchase is $300,055 versus what was in the memo.
Would someone like to move it?
Second.
Could you take the roll, City Clerk?
Alderman Fisk.
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite.
What's that?
We're doing a vote right now.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking about it with that new. Yeah, okay, fine.
Aye. Alderman Nguyen.
Lukewarm.
Alderman Wilson. Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Aye.
Alderman Suffredin. Alderman Ravel. Alderman Rainey. Alderman Fleming.
Aye.
All right, A310, purchase of vehicles for the Evanston Fire Department from Foster Coach sales, and in the amount at Alderman Fleming said of $300,055 passes the City Council 9-0. Alderman Fleming, can you take us to A5?
A5 is Ordinance 38-0-18, amending City Code Section 3-17-9 regarding Senior Citizen Persons with Disability Taxi Cab Program. This is moving the taxi cab participant share from $4 to $5 and changing the boundaries of the program to within the corporate boundaries of the City of Evanston.
Second.
Is there discussion? Alderman Fisk.
Could someone please just remind me how many public meetings there were held for this?
Quite a few.
Yeah.
It was discussed twice at Human Services. It's been discussed twice. And I think the key point here is that we have two programs. We have the issues with the coupons, but we are also moving to a separate program with a debit card.
Right.
And so through, I think, was mentioned earlier, 6 or 7 public workshops with the users. We were just going to go to the card, but we are proposing to use the coupon as well. So we think that this offers maximum flexibility for our residents. And by allowing the coupon to remain for those who are still using the coupon, that they would have access to that.
Okay.
Alderman Rainey.
The city manager mentioned it. The ombudsman mentioned that there were at least 7 focus group meetings where this was discussed among the seniors. So
Absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
this is an important
Right.
service we provide our residents. We were seeing a fair amount of fraud with it among a very small group of individuals, and we want to be able to continue offering it to those who need it, but also to deal with issues of a stigma of using the coupon. I think Alderman Braithwaite raised several issues, I think, that were addressed over the course of what's been a couple of months of talking about this. Again, we feel real positive that this is an improvement for our residents. And I don't remember the last time we did 7 focus groups on any subject before this body.
All right. Seeing no more lights, would someone like to move this ordinance?
I'd gladly like to move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
City Clerk, could you take the roll?
Alderman Fisk. Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Wilson. Alderman Ruth Simmons.
No.
Alderman Suffredin.
No.
Alderman Ravel. Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Alderman Fleming.
Aye.
All right. A5 Ordinance 38-0-18, amending the City Code Section 3-17-9 regarding Senior Citizen Person with Disabilities Taxi Cab Program, passes the Evanston City Council 7-2. Alderman Fisk, could you take us to P2, please?
We couldn't suspend it because he didn't have a unanimous.
Yes, thank you. Ordinance 46018, granting a special use for a Type 2 restaurant, Frio Gelato at 1301 Chicago Avenue. Zoning Board of Appeals and city staff recommend the adoption of this ordinance in the B1 Business District and the ODM Dempster Main Overlay District. And it's for introduction.
Terrific. Thank you. Alderman Fleming.
I just had a quick question. I noticed in the packet it says that they were out of compliance because they had the tables and chairs and such. What is our... So they were out of compliance, right? They are, before getting this Type 2 designation, it said in the packet they were out of compliance. They had more chairs and seating than allowed based on whatever designation they are now. So my question is, and I know they are because I go in there a lot. I like ice cream. So my question is just is there a penalty? Is there a ticket? What do we do when restaurants are out of compliance? We have compliance for a reason. So when they're out, what happens?
Okay, great. Got the question. Let's.
The acting community
We'll answer it
development
and
director.
then. Okay.
May I start the
You can,
response?
Alderman Nguyen.
Alderman Fleming, the owners of Frio Gelato they moved literally down the block, and they moved into the former homemade pizza location, and there had been tables and chairs there, and there had been tables and chairs in their prior location, and they didn't understand that they needed to go through the special use process again to even have the tables and chairs in the new location. So that's when it was discovered that they were out of compliance. And Ms. Storley might have a little bit more information on that.
Good evening, City Manager, City Clerk, Mayor, and members of the council. Erica Storley, Assistant City Manager. If a business is found to be not in compliance, it can be cited for violations of the zoning code. In this case, we have not proceeded with that, but certainly could if it was the desire of the council.
I would hope that our city staff, who are empowered to ensure that our rules and regulations are being followed, would use their good judgment and decide when people are getting cited for certain things or not, and that it's not the decision of the city council. Certainly, I don't think you
the
are.
city staff used their discretion in this instance and advised the business owner to apply for this license, which they have complied with and have done so expeditiously.
Immediately. Okay. All right. So is there someone that wants to move the motion?
I move approval.
Second.
Okay. City Clerk, could you take the roll on this on P2?
Alderman Fisk.
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen.
Aye.
Alderman Wilson. Aye. Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Aye.
Alderman Suffredin.
Aye.
Alderman Ravel. Alderman Rainey. Alderman Fleming.
All right, P2, Ordinance 46-0-18, granting a special use for a Type 2 restaurant, Frio Gelato, at 1301 Chicago, passes for introduction 9-0. Let's move on to P3, Alderman Fisk. Excuse me, P3, no, P4 is held in committee, P3 was taken off, Alderman Fisk.
Yeah. Who took it off? I'm sorry. Okay, let's
just
do
go
this
ahead
right.
and introduce it, Alderman
Okay, so
Fisk, and then we'll-
P3, Ordinance 47018, amending the definition of coach house in the City Code, Section 618.3. The previous version of the proposed text amendment did not receive a recommendation from the Plan Commission. It's for introduction.
Alderman Fleming.
All right, so I have a question. Sorry if I'm out of order with this one. My question was some language that was in there, and I couldn't hear you all when we were in automatic library. So some language that was in there was unclear to me because it talked about cottage houses or something. So there was the whole thing about, a coach house and that. But then it also mentioned, I don't have it in front of me, I think it said like a cottage house or, whatever. So it made me think of tiny houses, right? And I know that I think we hadn't gotten to that conversation. I don't think that they're permitted. So I just was trying to get some clarification. So excuse me if this is duplicate and you all are tabling it for that reason. I'm not insisting we move it forward. I just needed some clarity because someone in my ward is interested.
I think there is one in the 3rd Ward, actually. Isn't there a cottage house? An in-law house on a lot large enough to accommodate one? Well, the committee will look at that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Alderman Rainey.
Alderman Fisk, are you really happy moving this to the council floor? I thought we were going to keep this in committee.
I think one of our members asked for it to be moved to the council floor for larger discussion.
So it's,
Alderman Wilson.
All right, as long as we have a discussion.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Okay, so it's off the consent agenda. I'll move that we return it to the committee.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, so
Mr. Mayor, can I just say that I was right the first time when I said it was held in committee?
Duly noted, Alderman Fisk.
Thank
P3,
you.
Ordinance 47-0-18, amending the definition of coach house in the city code, section 6-18-3 is now returned to committee. Okay, let's move on to Alderman Wilson, if you can take us to the economic development item that was pulled off 01.
Yes, again, 01 Economic Development Grant for Evanston Equity in the Arts Hiring Program. As I read before, the committee and staff are recommending to the council that we approve funding totaling $25,000 to Mudlark Theater for the reasons I mentioned previously.
Thank you. Any discussion? Alderman Sarfinen.
Why are we giving a $500,000 enterprise $25,000 to pay an employee? I just don't understand. If Mudlark wants to increase diversity, shouldn't they just do it?
Okay.
Without our money?
Is there someone from the economic development that can just speak to that question?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Jennifer Lassick, the cultural arts coordinator, is here. I think she can speak to the program that was developed through the Cultural Arts Council and the discussion that, because this has already been before economic development and had been approved by economic development. She can speak to that.
Honorable Mayor Hagerty, members of the City Council, Clerk Reed, City Manager Bob Coates. This program was developed twofold. One is to offer a way for capacity building and operations for nonprofits, and especially arts nonprofits that, as you know, even though it often seems like they may have a sizable budget, they actually operate very tightly for all the services that they provide. So we wanted to find a way to help our arts organizations build capacity, but more importantly, what we were finding is that a lot of the, if I may just speak somewhat candidly, a lot of our kind of institutional arts organizations in Evanston tend to be very predominantly white. And when we were talking about diversity, we found that they thought of diversity in terms of their audience and their clientele, when really, to really bring equity to the table and to bring diversity, it has to start at a decision making. It has to be top down. It cannot be bottom up. And so we wanted to find a way to kind of to kill two birds with one stone, which is probably a really bad analogy to use in Evanston where we love birds. But to say that we want to really encourage diversity and help get someone decision making to do a paradigm shift so that arts embrace what we value here. But we also want to just make sure that the organization that we select has the capacity that after 1 year they're not going to let this person go. And so we were actually very intentional about what we required of the organizations that applied as far as their finances and stability, because we want this to be a lasting position that continues once the grant term is up.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. I've got several lights up here, so stick around in case anybody else has questions. We'll start with Alderman Fleming.
Thank you. So I understand the program. I wasn't here, obviously, when it was voted on, but I share the same concerns as Alderman Sufford, and I'm always happy to support hiring of local people, hiring of people of color, and so on and so forth. However, I don't think outside of us paying for city staff that it is the role of the city to do that at other organizations. I think your logic is correct. I think agencies do need to think about diversification in their staffing. However, I think they should think about that even if we don't give them the money. And I would hope that that would be the goal of Mudlark and any other organization in Evanston. I guess the way it's stated in here, it says, arts organizations struggle to find funding to expand and diversify their staff. I guess I'm not sure how they struggle to diversify their staff if they're not even thinking about that. I mean, you mentioned that sometimes they don't think about that. So anyway, I won't support this. I'm happy to allocate this money for equity in the arts of hiring some local artists, hiring some artists of color, or so whatever we decide that's going to be. But I don't think we want to be in the business of paying for staffing just so agencies could diversify, because I would want that person who's in the position to be there because they're looked at as a benefit to the agency, not because the agency received money from the city to hire someone of color. I also just would echo what Alderman Ruth Simmons said earlier, I really think I want to push us to look at when we think about equity. It's not just throwing some money at something or using the term to push our own agenda. And I'm not speaking to you directly, but just in the city overall, I think we really need to do a deeper dive into how we're looking at equity, what the importance of it is, and how we're implementing it throughout the city.
Thank you for your input, Alderman Fleming.
Thank you, Alderman Fleming. Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Thank you. And I brought this up at economic development, and I'm still not settled with it. What did we do to consider this grant opportunity for minority theater companies to build capacity instead of doing it the other way around? Because I keep hearing about a very celebrated theater company in town that is Black owned and led. Why wasn't that an option if we were looking to diversify our arts?
Well, Alderman Ruth Simmons, a theater that is a Black theater does not struggle with diversity. They are diverse. But, and the way that we partner, much like we did with, I think we're talking about the same celebrated arts organization, is that I help them to connect and to have really impactful and intentional and important partnerships. This is to get inside of, this is to speak to the heart of what the organizations that started in Rich Evanston wanted to do, where we really start bringing together different minds. And at the same time, that our arts money is very limited. Of course it is. That is the nature of today. And so this is yet a way to look at arts organizations as employers and companies and vendors and consumers that contribute to our economy. And so it was another way to look at dollars for the arts. I think we should support those companies, and I don't think that one excludes the other, but that wasn't the intention of this program. Anyone could apply. But I think the company that you're talking about did not have, it's too new, and it didn't have the financials. And again, the reason that we put those restrictions on and those qualifiers is because we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to have an organization hire someone and then let them go immediately. They had to have the capacity that was growing along with the grant program.
So what's the goal? The goal to the community, the arts community broadly, what's the goal for this money?
The goal for our arts community is that arts should be leading the way on thinking divergently and thinking in terms of equity. And I think that has to happen at a staff level, a management level. And so the goal is to economically support our arts organization at the same time that we are helping them support their own goals of diversity and equity, which they've been working on for a couple of years now since the start of Enrich Evanston. And it's been kind of a movement, and it was a way to merge those two things. So thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Ruth Simmons, and thank you, Jennifer. Alderman Wilson.
I think most of the points were covered, but it is a program that's going on 2 years old, and to your point, at the Economic Development Committee meeting, you did stress that the program has been promoted amongst the organizations, and this, I think, is the only organization that actually made the application so far. Three did? Okay, so 3 had applied. So, to the point, you were looking to get people in with a specific series of skill sets, but get them into management roles. And so that's really what this program originally, came from. If we wanted, I want to support. They met the requirements of the program. I feel like they should get the money because we have the program in place. But if we need to revisit what the program looks like, always open to that. But because this organization does qualify, we do have the program in place and it's funded. I think we should go ahead and proceed.
Yeah. Thank you, Alderman Wilson. Alderman Braithwaite.
Mr. Mayor, and I remember several years ago, before your position was created, talking about how the arts really contributes to our larger economic development plan. And I could just throw out the investment of time, energy, and resources just to, we've been talking about creating a downtown arts center and what that would mean to the vibrancy of our downtown for years. And so I use that discussion as a backdrop for this position because I do remember the conversation that we had at economic development, and I do remember supporting it. And I think for those who those who are not at that committee or recall the discussion, we really made it a point of making sure that this was a local person, if at all possible, and also stressing a person of color. So I think understanding that it was a very competitive process, and I think the wonderful thing about Mudlark is that they're actually doing it now. So it's not like this is a pilot, a test, or a gamble. I mean, they did an incredible production with the Art of Evolution, and I can't remember if they were there in support of this grant the night of economic development. I think that they were there. I do think that they were there. And again, they have created with a group of kids an amazing show that I think the mayor embraced and our city staff, and they did 3 or 4 shows after that, and that takes time and energy and resources. So to think that if they did this without a staff, I'm just, really excited to just imagine what they'll do with a dedicated staff person focused on that. So I don't know where's our Mudlark guy? Where is he? Mike, amazing performance. And I think if you have a staff person dedicated, we'll see more performances along the line. And Jennifer, I think you said something that was very important, and that was also stressed at our Economic Development Committee, that this is more than just a one-time and done. I mean, this is a real commitment for your theater company to do some amazing things. And I mean, again, if you guys have not seen that play, I think that if that's a sign of what's to come, then I'm 100% in support of this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alderman Braithwaite. Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Thank you. So I appreciate the effort and that you've complied, but I would like us to consider if there are opportunities for us to direct fund minority organizations going forward. I would like to explore that.
Thank you. Alderman Fleming.
All right, and I know it's late, but so here's the point for me for equity. So it's just what Alderman Ruth Simmons said, which is if we're talking about diversifying the arts and getting different thoughts in their life experience represented and such, that doesn't mean that we have to, using your terms, give money to white-leg organizations to have people of color. You can do that by giving the money directly to people of color. Or you can do, as I said, you can, if we want to advance equity in arts, there's a lot of ways we can do that. It does not have to be that we are going to subsidize a white-led agency because, we think they should have someone black there, if I'm being very honest, right? And so that's, I think, for me, a frustration when we talk about equity and diversity is that let's just throw a black person in there and then we have diversity.
Sure.
And again,
Sure.
so,
Absolutely.
and I understand that this, I wasn't here for this decision. I would have said the same thing in 2016.
Absolutely.
I understand that Michael from Mudlark has gone through the process we've asked him to. I do respect processes. I don't necessarily have to vote for them, but I do respect that he went through the process. But I am going to push back here because I don't think it's fair to say, we're not going to give the money directly to an African-American theater or Hispanic theater or whatever it is because they have diversity. A lot of times those places start because they're not included in other places, so they start their own, or their voice is not represented or what have you. So I won't support this for many reasons, but I do just want to continue to say I think we have to be really mindful if we're trying to really look at equity. It's not just throwing money somewhere or sticking a person in a position and then saying we've achieved equity. I think if an agency wants to be equitable, if they want to be diverse, that's a mission they should have. And as they're hiring going forward, they should look at that, any agency, not just when there's subsidized money available.
So Alderman Fleming, just one response I have to you. If at the end of this year we have only succeeded in bringing a person of color into a company for a year, the pilot has failed. The whole point is to bring teams and bring a different way of thinking, and for all of us to start thinking differently about how we do things and how we live and how we interact and how we treat each other. In reference to minority theater companies, my only point is that that's a whole different program. I mean, it's a whole different, yes, we should be giving money to all different groups. I just don't want to mix apples and oranges. I just was trying to explain the intention of this, but I mean, I want to see things like ID happening over and over again, where the arts are challenging what we think and how we think and teaching us what we don't even know. And that's the point of this. And if we don't do that, then the program will have failed, and we'll have to definitely reevaluate it. I mean,
Thank you, Jennifer. Seeing no more lights, would someone like to move the motion?
So moved. Second.
All right. City Clerk, could you take the roll?
Alderman Fisk. Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Wilson. Alderman Ruth Simmons. Alderman Suffredin. Alderman Ravel. Alderman Rainey. Alderman Fleming.
No.
Okay. Item 01, Economic Development Grant for Evanston Equity in the Arts Hiring Program, passes the City Council 7-2. We'll go ahead now and do call of the wards. We'll begin with you, Alderman Fisk.
No report.
Terrific. Alderman Braithwaite.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This Thursday, I'd like to invite all the residents of the Second Ward to our monthly ward meeting. Again, 7 p.m., District 65 building. We'll have Lara Biggs there talking about the city's master light plan, and as well as a safety report from our officer, Reggie Napier. Thank you, sir.
Excellent. Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Wilson. Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Thank you. I'd like the 5th Ward to join us for our ward meeting on the 19th of April here at the Civic Center, room G300, 7 p.m. Laura Biggs will be at our ward meeting as well, talking about the lighting plan, as well as an exercise on priority budgeting. We will review our budget and prioritize them as a ward, in addition to our announcements, updates, and our police report. Thank you.
Alderman Silverman.
Yeah, I just want to encourage everyone to check out the lights on Thayer between Central Park and Lawndale. Thanks.
Check out the lights.
There are the lighting, the LED, the new lights.
Oh, the new lights.
Oh, look,
the new
check 'em
lights
out.
are there.
It's
So okay, so they should check them out and let you know, or just check them out.
Take a look at the lights.
Alderman Ravel.
there
Thank
between
you,
Central
thank
Park
you,
and
Alderman
Lawndale.
Suffredin. Alderman
Yes, thank
Ravel.
you. I just like to mention that I'm having a meeting on Tuesday, April 17th at 7 p.m. at Chandler. It's for residents in Northeast Evanston to have a chance to get all the latest details about the Sheridan Road Improvement Project, ask all their questions.
Great. Thank you, Alderman Ravel. Alderman Rainey.
I'd like to announce the grand opening of Jamaica Good to Go that moved from the Chicago side of the street to the Evanston side on Friday. It's a bad date, Friday the 13th, but their address is 711 Howard, so that's good luck. And anytime 5 o'clock on, it's a grand opening, so come on down.
Alderman Fleming.
I am also having a ward meeting on April the 21st at 9 a.m. at Levy Center. I also will be having, I think I have Dave Stone back actually at my meeting, but talking about the lights. We also will begin talking about budgeting. And I also just want to recognize Ninth Ward resident Maddie, I'm going to forget her last name, but anyhow, she has spearheaded a beautification project in the ward. We are going to be the recipients of one of those lovely "You Are Beautiful" signs on the chute fence that's really ugly. And we also, we were able to get District 65 to cover some of the costs, so we're very excited. So you will be hearing about that. The students will be out painting and decorating, and we'll have a big party to celebrate that accomplishment, probably not till the fall since school's almost over, but I wanted to recognize her efforts as part of the Ninth Ward Advisory Committee.
Great. Thank you, Alderman Fleming. Alderman Wilson, would you like to lead us into executive session?
Pursuant to 5 Illinois compiled statutes ILCS 120/2A, I move that the City Council convene into executive session to discuss agenda items regarding personnel and minutes. These agenda items are permitted subject to be considered in executive session and are enumerated exceptions under the Open Meetings Act. These exceptions are 5 ILCS 120/2A, C1, and C21.
Excellent. City Clerk, could you take a roll?
Alderman Fisk. Alderman Braithwaite. Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Wilson. Alderman Ruth Simmons. Alderman Suffredin. Alderman Ravel. Alderman Rainey. Alderman Fleming.
Aye.
All right, so the Evanston City Council is recessing into executive session. Thank you, everybody, for coming out this evening, and thank you, everyone, for the respectful conversation over difficult topics tonight.